Story 1. The man in the woods. I'm 26, and I live alone in a small townhouse on the far edge of a quiet suburb. Most nights follow the exact same pattern. Late closing shift, quick dinner, then hours of gaming with my friends until way past midnight. It's repetitive, but it's familiar, and after a long day of dealing with customers, it's the only thing that helps me unwind. But a couple months ago, I've been having the kind of week where every little thing at work had pushed me closer to snapping. By the time I got home that night, even the thought of hopping into a call with my buddies felt exhausting. I wasn't tired enough to sleep, though. I tossed around on the couch, watched YouTube videos I didn't care about, and just sat there feeling restless. By 2 a.m., I needed to get away from the screen and the claustrophobic feeling of being inside. I don't go on walks often, but every time I do, I wonder why I don't do it more. There's something calming about a completely silent neighborhood at night, almost like the whole town is frozen in time, and I'm the only one awake to see it. So I threw on a hoodie, locked up, and stepped out into the cold, still air. At first, it was peaceful, almost therapeutic. Just dim porch lights glowing softly down one street, rows of older homes, and that quiet hum of nothingness you only get when it's truly late. I didn't have a destination. I just walked straight, letting my mind drift. But after a while, I realized I'd gone much further than usual. I hadn't turned once, and now the clustered suburban homes were gone. The road thinned out, stretching into a wooded area where the houses were so spread apart you could barely see them behind the trees. Only an occasional porch light cut through the darkness. The deeper I walked, the stranger it felt. The silence started to feel heavy, like the woods were swallowing up sound. And then a scream. A sharp, sudden male scream somewhere in a forest. Not a cry for help, more like someone yelling just to be heard. Loud enough to echo between the trees until it was impossible to tell where it came from. I stopped dead in my tracks. Nothing moved. No rustling. No footsteps. Just a sound lingering in the back of my skull. After half a minute, I forced myself to keep walking. I knew I couldn't figure out what that scream was about, and dwelling on it only made me imagine worse possibilities. So I kept moving, even though the atmosphere had shifted from peaceful to unsettling. The road changed too. Street lights were farther apart. The houses I could see looked abandoned. Faded paint, overgrown yards, and broken porch steps. Even the road itself looked cracked and worn, like no one used it anymore. An entire forgotten neighborhood, sitting in the middle of the woods. Everything in me told me I shouldn't be there. And then the scream came again. This time closer. Much closer. The same exact tone. Like someone repeating whatever message they were trying to send. I turned around slowly. The street behind me was mostly swallowed in darkness, the dim streetlights barely illuminating patches of cracked pavement. I didn't see anyone, but the feeling of being watched bloomed in my chest like ice. My instinct screamed at me to leave. So I picked up my pace and headed back the way I came. After maybe 2 minutes, another scream tore through the woods, this time from directly behind me. My blood ran cold. Someone was there. I spun around, and this time I saw him, a man standing in the road. He wore dark clothes from head to toe, blending into the shadows, so well that I only saw him for a single second before the darkness swallowed him again. He wasn't running or yelling or making any sudden moves. He was just standing there, staring at me. I didn't wait for more. I turned and speed-walked, almost jogged, back toward the suburban area. I looked behind me every few seconds, but after that initial glimpse, I never saw him again. Each time I checked, the road was empty, which only made it worse. How could he vanish so fast in a straight, open road? By the time the clustered houses came back into view, I still didn't feel safe, but at least the suffocating feeling from the woods had lessened. I rushed across the last few blocks and practically ran to my townhouse. I shut the door, locked it, double-checked the deadbolt, and forced myself to breathe. I got some water, grabbed a snack, and sat down at the kitchen table trying to calm down. I kept telling myself I was overreacting, that the guy might have been a hiker or had mental issues, or maybe wasn't even looking at me. But that didn't explain the screams, or how he followed without being seen. And then a shuffling sound outside my front door, soft like a shoe sliding. Then a heavy knock. My heart stopped. I crept toward the door, holding my breath, and pressed my ear against it. Nothing, no voice, no movement. Just silence. I slowly looked through the peephole. Someone was standing there. A tall, dark figure. Same dark clothes. No porch light meant I couldn't see his face at all. Just the outline of a man facing my door. My mouth went dry. He had followed me home. I backed away, grabbed my phone, and called 911 as quietly as I could. He knocked again, louder this time. Then again, 5 or 6 times. But by the time I peeked again, he was gone. The officers showed up, walked the area, checked the paths and bushes around the house, but found nothing. They asked about the screams, but when I described them, they shrugged it off as weird but not necessarily criminal. For the next month, the nightmare didn't end. At random times, usually around 3 or 4 a.m., I'd wake up to loud, heavy knocks at the front door. Whenever I checked, no one was there. No footsteps leaving. No car. Just empty darkness. The man from the woods had never been found. But I know, deep down, that something horrific was happening out there that night. And whatever it was, I wasn't supposed to make it out. Story 2. The passenger in the dark driving late-night Lyft shifts had become a strange part of my life. Almost a second identity. During the day, I felt normal, grounded, predictable. But past midnight, when the streets emptied and my headlights carved the only path through the silence, the world always felt subtly wrong, like something that didn't belong was roaming around out there. I never allowed myself to overthink it. If I did, I wouldn't be able to work the hours I needed. And at the time, I was in my mid-20s, burnt out but stubborn, pushing myself through long, inconsistent overnight shifts because they paid more and clashed less with the rest of my life. This night started exactly like dozens of others. I turned the app on around 11 p.m., accepted 2 quick rides from people stumbling out of bars, and then settled into the usual rhythm of waiting. You learn to be grateful for anything after midnight, because once the crowds die, your phone might sit silent for half an hour or even longer. So when the next request came in, I didn't even think. I just tapped accept automatically. Only afterward, as my car rolled forward, did I glance at the map and immediately felt thrown off. This pickup wasn't heading toward downtown, the nightlife district, or even one of the major roads. The location pin sat in a completely isolated stretch nearly outside the city limits, an empty patch of road with no houses, no stores, nothing except thick tree lines on both sides. It wasn't unheard of for calls to come from random places. People break down, get stranded, do dumb things. But this one felt different. The further I drove, the more my instincts started whispering that something was wrong. 15 minutes later, I reached the spot. The road was dead silent. My headlights stretched forward into a thick, empty darkness. I pulled over, put my car in park, messaged the passenger that I had arrived, and waited. 1 minute, 2 minutes, 5. Nothing. No car, no house, no human being in sight, only the wind moving through the trees. I canceled the ride, trying to ignore the uncomfortable heaviness creeping into my chest. As much as I hated wasting time, the smart thing was to leave. So I turned the car around and started heading toward civilization. I'd only been driving 5 minutes when my phone chimed again. Another request. Pickup location, not just near the previous one. Almost exactly the same area, only a mile deeper into the woods. Most people would have found that strange. But for drivers like me, this was normal. Sometimes the GPS glitches. Sometimes the app misplaces a pin. Customers often reorder. It happens constantly. So again, I accepted. And again, I drove right back. This stretch of road felt even darker than before. I slowed to a crawl, following the map until I reached a tiny clearing just barely visible in my headlights. And then I saw him, a man standing on the gravel shoulder. No umbrella, no car, no house behind him, no streetlights, nothing but darkness stretching endlessly around him. He wore regular clothes, jeans, and a gray hoodie, but the way he stood there made something inside me tighten. He wasn't waving, wasn't pacing, wasn't scrolling on his phone. He was just waiting, still, silent, facing the road like he knew I would come. He opened the door and slipped into the back seat without saying a word. The moment he shut the door, the air inside the car felt different, heavier, colder, wrong. I checked the GPS for his drop-off. Another isolated location. Also empty. Also nowhere. As I drove, I kept catching his eyes in the mirror. He wasn't just glancing at me. He was staring, unblinking, studying me, like he was waiting for something or deciding something. I tried to break the tension. Pretty quiet night, huh? No answer. Not even a nod. Just that same dead stare reflected in the glass. When we arrive at the drop-off location, a lonely patch of dirt surrounded by miles of nothing, the silence grew sharp. The engine hummed. The rain ticked on the windshield. And the man behind me finally moved. "Get out," he said quietly. I froze. "What?" He raised his arm, a gun in his hand, pointed directly at the back of my head. "Get out," he repeated, tone flat and empty. My blood turned cold. I opened the door. My legs felt rubbery as I stepped onto the road. The man got out too and positioned himself several feet behind me, far enough to keep control, close enough to kill me if he wanted. "Walk," he said. So I walked, off the road, into the trees, into pitch-black woods so silent they felt suffocating. For 10 minutes, he made me walk without saying a single word. The forest branches scraped overhead. The wet ground squished under our feet. And every step made me think of the same terrifying question. Why bring me this deep unless he didn't want me found? When he finally stopped me, I felt my spine turn to ice. This was it. My life was over. But something in me exploded. Pure adrenaline, pure survival instinct. Without even thinking, I bolted deeper into the dark. "Stop," he shouted behind me. I didn't. A gunshot ripped through the trees. The echo bounced around the forest. My ears rang. My legs burned. Then everything went silent. The man wasn't chasing anymore. I didn't stop running for what felt like an eternity. When my lungs burned so badly I could barely breathe, I slowed to a frantic walk and stumbled to the woods until I eventually found a small rural road with a few houses. Someone let me inside and called the police. My car was gone. My phone was gone. Everything was gone. But I was alive. Barely. Police never found the man. The Lyft account he used was fake. They never found the car. Never found the gun. Never found a single trace of where he came from or where he went. Over the next few months, I kept getting pickup requests from that same barren stretch of road. Same time of night, same impossible location. Each time, the police checked. Each time, they found nothing. Eventually, I realized the truth. It wasn't the job making me paranoid. It wasn't the hours. It was him. Whoever he was. Whatever he wanted. I knew he was still out there, waiting for another unlucky driver to accept the wrong ride at the wrong time. I quit soon after. I haven't driven for a single rideshare company since. Story 3. The light in the window. It had been raining since early morning. The kind of cold, steady rainfall that makes the whole town feel muted. I spent the entire Sunday inside my house, drifting from one couch position to another, half watching movies while scrolling on my phone. Rainy days always gave me an excuse to stay unproductive, which is probably why I never moved from that couch until nearly 10 p.m. I was exhausted for no real reason, one of those foggy mental days where your body feels heavy even though you did nothing. When it finally came time to think about dinner, the idea of cooking felt like climbing a mountain. So I grabbed my jacket, stepped out into the rain, and drove to a nearby fast food place. The streets were nearly empty. Rain hammered the windshield, fog floating low against the headlights. I grabbed my food and headed straight home, barely a 20-minute trip. But as I turned onto my street, something instantly caught my attention. My house stood out like a beacon in the dark. A single bright light was shining from my upstairs bedroom window. It looked unmistakably like the ceiling light, fully on, glowing through the rain-soaked glass. And what made my stomach drop was the fact that I had never gone upstairs that day. I always shut off all the lights when I left. Nothing should have been on. But the moment registered too quickly, almost like my brain didn't want to believe it. By the time I eased into the driveway, the angle of the car made the window disappear from view completely. I convinced myself it had to be a weird reflection from my headlights, or maybe my eyes were tired. Rain at night can make everything look distorted. I shrugged it off, grabbed the food bag, and went inside. I turned on the living room lights and set everything down, still half in a trance from the exhaustion. But as I started toward the stairs to turn off whatever light I'd seen, I felt myself waking up a bit. The entire upstairs hallway was pitch black. Every door was open, every switch off, not a single bulb glowing anywhere. I stood there, confused and disoriented. I walked into the bedroom anyway, searching for, I don't even know what, evidence? A reason? Something to explain what I thought I saw. I stepped up the window and looked through at the dark, rain-blurry neighborhood outside. Nothing, just a silent street and the sound of rain tick-tick-ticking on the roof. Maybe I really did imagine it. Maybe I needed sleep more than I thought. I returned downstairs, opened my food, put on a show, and started eating. Within minutes, I drifted into a half-sleep on the couch. But every time I dozed off, I woke up with a jolt of pure unease. It felt wrong, like I wasn't alone, like someone was watching me. The sensation grew each time I woke up, stronger, sharper, harder to ignore. I kept looking behind me, scanning corners, checking across the room. Eventually, it got so intense that I got up and turned on every light in the living room. It didn't help, because the next time I woke up on the couch, my eyes immediately shot toward the hallway entrance. The upstairs was still dark, but something about that deep, shadowy stairwell made every alarm in my brain start screaming. I got up again and turned on the hallway lights. After that, I decided I should just call it a night. I cleaned up the food, shut off the TV, and headed toward the stairs. And when I reached the bottom step, a light clicked off upstairs. I froze completely. I hadn't even realized it was on until it turned itself off. My body went cold, but for some reason, instead of turning around and leaving the house, I slowly walked up the stairs. Maybe I needed confirmation. Maybe I needed to know I wasn't losing my mind. The upstairs was silent, except for the steady patter of rain on the roof. Moonlight washed through the window. The air felt colder than before, heavy and wrong. Something in the atmosphere felt aware of me. Then something shifted in the corner of my vision. The bedroom closet door. It moved, just slightly, a tiny crack opening. And in that sliver of darkness, an eye was staring back at me. We locked eyes for a split second, wide, unblinking, human. The closet door suddenly swung open, and a man stepped out. He didn't come at me. He didn't grab me. Instead, he walked toward me slowly, hands up, voice low, trying to reassure me, like he knew me somehow, like we had shared a room before, like he belonged here. His smile, it wasn't normal. It was strained, stretched, wrong. He looked wild, unwashed, hair tangled and clothes filthy. But his eyes stayed glued to mine with an unsettling intensity. Before he got any closer, I spun around, bolted down the stairs, and ran straight out into the pouring rain. I called 911 from the driveway, heart hammering. A few seconds later, I saw him burst out my front door and sprint down the street, disappearing into the night like he knew exactly where to go. Police arrived fast. They found my back door busted in, The lock shattered, the handle broken clean through. I never used the back door, so I hadn't noticed anything wrong. The man must have been inside my house the entire evening, watching me, standing in that upstairs room while I was eating dinner below him, maybe even watching me sleep on the couch. The lights turning on and off? That still haunts me. He must have been checking the hallway, checking on me, waiting for the right moment. Nothing was stolen. Nothing was disturbed downstairs. So whatever he wanted, it wasn't my belongings. I still don't sleep well, because he's out there somewhere. And he knew exactly where I lived, and exactly how to get inside. If anything else happens, I'll update, because deep down, I know he wasn't finished.